I would imagine, like many of you, I have had all of the emotions over the past week, and it has. It's been 7 days since we got to witness the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk. Last Wednesday, I mean, I think I have been since really in this almost like state of disbelief and truthfully confusion and really just utter shock. That lasted, couldn't sleep through the night. That's when we recorded last week's episode, this tribute to Charlie Kirk. Drifting in and out of sleep on Wednesday night, woke up Thursday, and those feelings of disbelief had kind of morphed into, I mean, grief and sadness and just being very tearful about it. Went to bed Thursday night, woke up on Friday, and those feelings of sadness had really transformed into like anger and rage. I had to remind myself several times throughout the day that I am a Christian. I need to have Christ-like thoughts. A lot of that stemming from the response that we saw, whether it was from Democratic elected officials, whether it was from people posting on TikTok or the cesspool that is blue sky, right? Seeing people celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. That made me, of course, very just vengeful, angry. But I'll tell you how I feel now. And again, this is coming after Sunday, which I'll get to Sunday. I feel hopeful and I feel inspired, and important to mention that that comes after listening to Charlie Kirk's widow, which those words don't even feel right coming out of my mouth. Erica Kirk's remarks last week that she issued to the nation. Really, really powerful, really, really strong. She is someone who is fierce. She is compassionate. She is beautiful. She knows that Charlie is with his Lord and his Savior. And I would imagine that's providing her a lot of peace and comfort. But her words that she had to say, that left me feeling hopeful too. Let's call it the Charlie Kirk effect, what we have seen. And again, I'm going back to Sunday because I went to church on Sunday as I normally do, right? But what I saw wasn't like a normal Sunday. I live in the Bible Belt in Tennessee, so you're typically pretty hard pressed to find a seat at my church on a normal Sunday. I got to church about 15, 20-ish minutes early for service. It starts at 9:30, got there around 9:15. There were no parking spots anywhere. We had to park what felt like a mile away, which is not overly enjoyable when you're 39 weeks pregnant. Got inside, there were no seats anywhere for my husband, myself. I went with my family. We had to sit in separate areas. We left the service. We went to the middle service. There's an 8 o'clock, a 9:30, and an 11. Got out of the 9:30 service, and there were people already waiting in the lobby to get to their seats for the next service. It was one of the most beautiful things. I attended a vigil in my hometown on Sunday. I live a little north of Nashville, not a huge town. We had about 2,000 people show up to honor Charlie Kirk's life and the movement really that he has helped kickstart and build. And again, that Erica reiterated will continue on. I've received thousands and thousands of messages from people telling me that maybe Sunday was their first time going to church, maybe in their lives. Some people, returning Christians who just feel this conviction to get back to their faith. People telling me they're buying Bibles, they want to get back into the Word. I can speak to what we've seen internally at Turning Point. As a Turning Point employee myself, we have seen donations like we have never seen before, where people, some of them being first-time donors, some of them having given to the organization before, are so generously and graciously giving their own money because they finally see the severity of where we are as a nation, where you can and will, as proven by the assassination of Charlie Kirk, be killed for stating the truth and doing it in a manner that is thought-provoking. That's all Charlie did. He sat on these college campuses behind a table and said, "Prove me wrong." They couldn't do that, so what do? They kill him. We've seen now where 54,000 students at both the high school and college level have reached out and inquired about starting a Turning Point chapter at their school. Let's watch this video from President Trump this past week.
Turning Point it became a very big deal. And I heard they had like 38,000. So he wanted to get it up to 20,000 chapters. That's a lot. That would have been a lifetime's work. I heard that over the last 4 days, they have 38,000 people wanted 38,000 chapters at colleges, schools, other places. Numbers that, nobody's ever heard of numbers like that. So I think Turning Point could be, through what happened, this horrible act, it could be maybe bigger than it could have ever been.
Again, this was earlier in the week, so he mentions, I think, 38,000. It's 54,000 as it stands right now. Incredible news. This whole Charlie Kirk effect, a tragic, horrific injustice now sparking prayer, people going to church, people buying Bibles, vigils happening all across the country, young people wanting to get involved, wanting to continue on the movement that Charlie really helped build. It's a very stark contrast from what we see when the left views something as an injustice. Now, you know what they do? They burn down cities, they loot businesses, they riot in the streets. I mean, really think about it. We've been told now these Democratic elected officials are getting on the news and saying, we really need to tone down the rhetoric. We need unity. Political violence is condemnable, but it's always a but, right? Let me tell you what the but is. But this is only happening from one side. The bullets are only flying from one side. Think about it. What does the left do when they don't like illegal immigrants being deported? They attack ICE agents, which, keep in mind, again, the president's administration is deporting the worst of the worst, the most violent illegal immigrants, okay? I'm talking gang members, human smugglers, child sex traffickers, drug dealers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They attack the ICE agents for doing this. What about the Tesla fire bombings? What about the horrific shootings that we have seen across the nation? Minnesota being one trans shooter, Nashville, my backyard, being another trans shooter. What about the beautiful, innocent, law-abiding Ukrainian refugee who lost her lives at the hands of a monster, where we saw Democratic elected officials come out and basically say that he was the victim? The man who took her life, the black man, I guess they saw this to be a black man who had been arrested 14 times prior and a beautiful white woman, and they chose the black man to be the victim in this story. What about James Comey? I forgot about this. I'm like trying to recount as I'm thinking about this podcast what I want to say, all the different instances I had forgotten where James Comey, the former FBI director, had posted on his social media pages 8647, which was a kind of cryptic, indirect way of insinuating that he wants to eliminate the 47th president of the United States, to which he then said, well, I didn't really know what this message meant. Then why did you post it on your social pages? Again, as the former director of the FBI. No, these bullets, again, they're only flying one way. And they've hit President Trump. He took a bullet. He's had, I guess, technically 2 assassination attempts on his life. What about Steve Scalise, another person who took a bullet? And now Charlie Kirk is dead. So what do we do? How do we combat this? How do we move forward? Let me tell you, I've been thinking a lot about this. My mind has gone like 1,000 different directions. And again, my answer probably would have looked a lot different and a lot more vengeful if you asked me this question prior to Sunday, prior to seeing the revival that I really do believe it's like a once in a lifetime type of revival that we're seeing among Christians, among conservatives, among the silent majority. My answer probably would have been different to how do we fight this. But let me tell you how we fight this. We do exactly what Charlie Kirk did best, which is to speak the truth. It's important, of course, when we're talking about a political assassination, to address the political spectrum that we're working with here. And again, to really acknowledge the violence and the vitriol and the rhetoric. They love that word, and the rhetoric that is coming from the left. But allow me to make myself very clear. The fight that we are fighting is really not one that is political at all. It is a spiritual fight. And I don't say that lightly. That verbiage kind of gets tossed around a lot. But I mean, if you really think about it, this is something we talked about in my church on Sunday, which I go to a fantastic Bible-believing church. And there is a difference, by the way, between a Bible-believing church and a non-Bible-believing church. I go to Long Hollow in Hendersonville. We have a fantastic pastor. His name is Robbie Gallaty. I'm going to show you, actually, a clip of what a non-Bible-believing church is. This is Jasmine Crockett, right? Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's pastor in Texas. Watch this.
Malcolm X got assassinated. Medgar X got assassinated. Don't compare Kirk to King. Ain't no such comparison now. What Kirk said was racist, rooted in white supremacy, nasty, and hate-filled. But he still should be alive. He still should be playing with his kids. He still should be experiencing the love with his wife. He still should be experiencing life as he saw it. I don't want anybody, please hear me well, anybody to be victimized by political violence.
Yeah, so that's a non-Bible believing church, by the way. All of that to say, it's a spiritual fight. It is one of good versus evil. And when talking about a spiritual fight, obviously the enemy being Satan, the father of lies, of deception, of manipulation. He aims to kill and to destroy and to steal and to lie. That's exactly what we're seeing. So how do we combat lies? We do that by telling the truth. We've seen now the text exchange that has been released between the shooter, the assassin, and his trans boyfriend. We were gaslit by people like Jimmy Kimmel, by people in mainstream media, again, elected officials who were telling us. I believe it was Eric Swalwell who posted something that the shooter was a MAGA, straight, cis, white man. That's what he said. I'll put the transcript of the text up on the screen. Starts with this. So the roommate had received a text from the assassin that said, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." They were big time gamers into the whole Discord community, online gaming, which is really dark, by the way. And if you're a parent watching this and you have kids and your children are involved in this, you should really make sure you know what they're doing, you know what they're involved in. The roommate goes under the keyboard, looks, and there's a note that says, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." The roommate then responds, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson, the assassin, responds back. He says, "I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I'm sorry to involve you." Roommate, the trans roommate, says, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" He says, "I am. I'm sorry." Roommate says, "I thought they caught the person." Robinson says, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering." That old dude, maybe some of you, if you were kind of following the minute-by-minute coverage last Wednesday after this happened, they had arrested some like old white dude who was saying that he was the shooter. Now they're charging him with obstruction of justice because he's come out and said he just said that he was the shooter to give the real shooter time to escape, acting as a diversion. The roommate says, "Why?" Robinson says, "Why did I do it?" The roommate says, "Yeah." Robinson says, "I had enough of his hatred. Motive established. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they've moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it." Roommate says, "How long have you been planning this?" Robinson says, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there's a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept the spot, but I don't want to chance it." He sends another message. "I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't even know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I had changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man?" It's amazing the things you think about after murdering someone. You're more concerned about what you're going to say to your father about the gun that you can't bring back home. Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke. All right, I'm going to have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. I don't know. I think that was a $2,000 scope. Delete this exchange. He responds again. My dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it's very unique. He's calling me right now, not answering. I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff." He continues on. "You are all I worry about, love." The roommate says, "I'm much more worried about you." Robinson, "Don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent." We saw ABC News basically gushing at this text exchange between Charlie Kirk's killer and his trans lover. Watch this.
We have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate, who is transitioning calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. So a very interesting and, as Pierre said, riveting press conference, David.
Yeah, these are the same kind of people who would probably find Ted Bundy very charming. I wanted to show you this text exchange for a couple reasons. Number one is to fully and entirely debunk this whole MAGA Christian conservative narrative that's being put forward again by people like Jimmy Kimmel. Watch this.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Yeah, I don't really have words for that. There was no sane, competent person who believed for 1 second that this person who shot Charlie Kirk was a right-winger. And the second reason why I wanted to release this text exchange, talk about it, where, again, a motive is very clearly highlighted, and it was a man's hatred for Charlie Kirk and his perceived politics, is to debunk another narrative that's out there, which is that in some way, shape, or form, Charlie's assassination was linked to Israel, the Israeli government, its influence and the extreme pressure they had allegedly put on Charlie as an individual, Turning Point USA as an organization, the influence they have over our government. Here's what I'll say about that. I don't even want to spend too much time talking about this because there's nothing solidifying. There's no evidence. There's no proof that there was this big altercation or intervention between Bill Ackman, which is a Jewish billionaire, and Charlie Kirk in his final days in the Hamptons in New York. Like, I'm not even going to get into all that. Okay. But here's what I will say. I mean, pretty confidently based on my interaction with the situation, my involvement, the conversations that Charlie and I had, how I know he felt on certain topics. Here's what I'll say. Israel did not kill Charlie Kirk. It was a leftist, a crazy, unhinged, deranged leftist with a trans boyfriend, okay? That's who murdered Charlie because he was consumed with too much, probably isolation if I had to guess, being online too much. He was brainwashed, I would imagine, by his academic institution, as we have seen so many times, into thinking that Charlie Kirk was this hateful person. Again, he knew he couldn't prove him wrong, so what do? They shoot him. He confessed to it. It's in the text exchange. I would not consider myself typically a naive person, okay? I would consider myself a realist. He confessed to it in text, engraved on the casings of the bullets, okay? I think to say that Israel killed Charlie is really just beyond the pale, honestly. So, again, being involved in some of these conversations, knowing very confidently where Charlie stood in his support for Israel, I do believe he was asking questions, and understandably so. He was asking the right questions. When you have a war that's gone on this long, with no recourse, you've had Israeli government, Israeli leadership not doing what they say they're going to do, violating certain things. I believe Charlie was asking all the right questions, and understandably so. But at the end of the day, I know where his support lied in that fight. So that's all I'm going to say. That's it. That narrative, I believe, is a reach, to say the least. I believe it is a total conspiracy, and I believe it is incredibly distasteful to try to overly politicize Charlie's death in a way that has been shown online. The story that's been put out there, this narrative that's been growing in these online spaces, has been debunked thus far by Charlie's pastor, Pastor Rob McCoy. It's been debunked by Charlie's team, his executive protection team as well, his executive producer. It's been debunked by Bill Ackman himself. It's been debunked by people in the room. Enough of that. Again, that's kind of all I have to say about that right there. I want to talk about the future of conservatism on college campuses. Of course, this is what I have found myself doing over the past 2.5 years, getting on college campuses, largely to thank people and organizations like Turning Point, Charlie. Charlie really gave me my voice, okay? Getting on these campuses, both high school and college campuses alike, and really trying to mobilize and engage with the youth. As we have seen, as made very clear in November of 2024, this was a critical demographic to ultimately getting President Trump elected. And if you ask Charlie Kirk what his goal was with this, especially Prior to the election, he would tell you his goal was to create as many first-time MAGA voters as he could. Following the election, it was to turn those first-time MAGA voters, which again, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, into lifelong conservatives. I would be lying to you if I said there wasn't any apprehension on my end to go back onto these college campuses, because I have seen with my own eyes, in my own experiences, the violence. And I say that word with my full chest, the violence that we are up against, especially from trans Tifa, right? If you're insane enough to believe that men can get pregnant and that women need prostate exams and that tampons belong in boys' bathrooms or whatever other crazy stuff that they believe, you're insane enough clearly to pull a gun and shoot someone. So is there apprehension? And truthfully, like I'm scared. Not even gonna lie, especially now bringing life into this world any day now, it's a scary thought for me. I say that, number one, to remind you that I'm a human being, right? Fearlessness and courage are very different things. People all the time tell me, Riley, how are you so fearless? Thanks for being fearless. I am not fearless, okay? I have fears. Don't love clowns. Don't love spiders, okay? I'm not a fearless person. Courage is very different. Courage is having fears, but still being willing to do the righteous and the just and the moral and the right and the fair thing. That being said, I will still continue on with my campus tour that I will be doing in conjunction with Turning Point USA. Some of the stops that I was to be making were to be sitting in the seat right next to Charlie, which is a pretty grim and just tragic thought. Number one, to imagine like I could have been there. I would have been there at UVU if I weren't this far along in my pregnancy, and to know that there was still more work to be done by Charlie himself is a really sad thought. But his memory will continue on. His campus tour will continue. They'll be having different people fill in on the spots and the stops that he was to make, which I've had tons of people asking me or talking about online. There's been discourse online of who is the next Charlie Kirk. Charlie is unequivocally irreplaceable. The intellect that he had, the political strategic mind that he had, his willingness to go into the belly of the beast, to have these conversations, and he could do it on any topic. It didn't matter if it was an economic topic, a social topic, a cultural topic. It didn't matter if it was surrounding the border or crime or theology or policy. We've seen him even debate waffles versus pancakes, okay? Like, he could debate in an intellectual, thought-provoking way anything. He's irreplaceable. There is no person like Charlie Kirk. I mean, he's the best and most effective activist either side had, hence why they killed him. So there is no Charlie Kirk who can do exactly what he did. But I believe what we are going to see is a generation of people implementing the same style and format that Charlie Kirk used to engage civil discourse, which I know Charlie would be so thrilled about. I know he is thrilled about it. He's probably sitting at the side of his creator in heaven right now, smiling, looking at what happened last Sunday, watching people want to get out on these campuses, put up a table and do exactly what he did. I think we're going to see 10,000 Charlie Kirks, if not more, in this same setting. So that's my answer to who is the next Charlie Kirk. He's irreplaceable, but in a sense, I think we can all be a Charlie Kirk. And one more point I want to make as it pertains to, I think, especially the future of conservatism on college campuses. Two more points. Number one, I think we're going to see a lot of apprehension and reluctancy from universities themselves. I think they're going to see people like me, maybe other conservative figures, as a liability, right? They're not going to want blood on their hands. They're not going to want to be responsible for trying to facilitate an environment where they can ensure everyone's safety. No way. So I think we're going to see a lot of universities and colleges begin to deny people like me on campuses. And if they do that, or if they tell you that you can't start a Turning Point chapter on your high school or college campus, that is illegal, as confirmed by Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. Okay, they can't do that. So push back. Be willing to get into that battle because it's inevitably coming. Be ready for that. Couple action items that I want to leave with you all. These were some of the things actually that Erica Kirk said in her remarks just last week. Number one is to go to turningpointusa.com that has fantastic resources of how to get involved in the movement. Again, the amount of messages I've received, people telling me like, I want to get involved, but I don't know where to start. Go to turningpointusa.com, TPUSA.com. You can also come to AmFest, America Fest in Phoenix. It is December 18th through the 21st. I imagine that will be I think a fantastic way to honor Charlie's life, his legacy, what he's built. It will be fantastic. So again, that's in Phoenix. It is America Fest. Erica also gave a call to pastors to join Turning Point USA Faith, which allow me to remind you, pastors have a responsibility to shepherd their flock. The flock is the congregation, okay? So whether it was seeing maybe first-time visitors in their congregation, in their church body this week, or maybe returning believers, it is to shepherd them. Ultimately, the goal at the end of the day is to give their lives to Christ, is to lead their flock to salvation. What we're witnessing, it really is a once-in-a-lifetime revival that is happening right now. So pastors need to teach his word, not their word. It goes back to being a Bible-believing church, having a pastor that is a Bible-believing pastor. It reminds me of verses like 1 Timothy chapter 4. So anyways, and if you went to church this Sunday and you saw someone there for the first time, I encourage you to follow up with that person. If you got their contact, maybe you didn't, maybe you'll see them again next week. I would encourage you to get their contact then, follow up with them. I think accountability is crucial, especially when it comes to growing in your spiritual life. That relationship with Christ, he refers to so often in the Bible, especially those who are just getting involved, to having a childlike faith. What do you do to children? You have to parent them. Be that person for someone who is just getting involved. Check up on them, tell them to come back, start a devotional group. Accountability is crucial. And the last kind of action item that really struck me when listening to Erica, she talked about knowing the Bible, but she used the words, and she said, this is what Charlie would want, is to make heaven crowded. And man, I'll tell you, I've thought about that every day since hearing that. What a fantastic command, is to make heaven crowded. I love that. Last thing I want to leave you guys with, as I said, it can be daunting. It is daunting. It is overwhelming to really take that initial leap of faith and open the Bible for the first time, right? Where do you start? There are so many questions. Do you start in Genesis? Do you literally just open it? I mean, we're taught to read books page by page, front to back. Is that what you do when you're really trying to dissect the Bible? I don't say this as a theologian or as a pastor. I say this as a Christian who understands and knows that we have a creator who sent his son to walk this earth, who lived a sinless life, who died on the cross for our sins, crucified, was buried, rose again 3 days later for the hope and the promise of eternal life. Okay. Just my advice, my recommendations, if you will. Take it or leave it. Number one, it matters what version of Bible you're reading. Lots of different versions out there. There's ESV, English Standard Version. There's CSB. There's NIV. There's King James Version. Obviously, the Bible was originally written in Hebrew, translated to English. There's all sorts of different translations. You want something, at least when I kind of step my foot into that, I want something that's readable. The version that I use is the NIV, which is New International Version. Again, I found this to be, it uses modern language, so you're not having to translate the thous and the these and you know, all of that stuff. It uses modern language. NIV is accessible to most people in terms of accuracy, because that is something you have to be concerned about when you're translating things, especially with a language that is very different than ours. Not as many, like even the way I've learned this now and spending time in the Word, the way they describe things, how they use pictures and their symbols and signs and all kinds of different stuff. You want it to be accurate, an accurate translation. I find NIV to be pretty good there. And again, it's good for new believers. It's good for casual reading. It's good for understanding the big picture. I got my Bible from Lifeway.com. Very standard. Had it embossed with my name on it. There's, I think on the website, you can like customize the front of your Bible. So it has my name on it, makes it very personal. It makes it, you know, there's accountability. It's yours. You take it with you. You write notes in it. One more resource I want to tell you about when it comes to getting into the Word is the Bible 365 app, which is Erica Kirk's app that she created a while ago, which has had a huge spike in downloads over the past week, as you could probably imagine. This is a fantastic resource because the idea is to read from cover to cover, but it allows you to do this in a bite-sized manner and over the span of a fairly decent amount of time. It's important to understand when you're getting into the Word, reading your Bible, it really is like a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I promise you, you will learn new things. You could read a passage, a scripture that you've read 100 times. You might read it 101st time and you see it in a different light. So you're not meant to understand it all the first time. This app is fantastic, a fantastic resource. So I encourage you to download the Bible 365 app. Now, where to start when you're reading the Bible? As I said, we're taught to read books front to back. I would not recommend that when reading the Bible, especially again as a new believer getting into the Word for the first time. Here's where I would start. There's the Old Testament and there's the New Testament. There are 66 individual books in the Bible. I would personally start in the New Testament. The first 4 books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these are called the Gospels. The first 3 books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are synoptic Gospels, meaning they tell the same story, the same message, if you will, but they're told from a different perspective and kind of have different overall themes to them. I would personally, if it were me, start in John. This ultimately gives us a good idea of who Jesus really is, which I find to be useful. It equates Jesus to God. It is, in terms of the Gospels, I believe chronologically, like in terms of timeline, it was written far after Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It focuses on these signs that I mentioned, these different symbols, if you will, statements. So I would start there. It's written to really inspire belief. I'd start with John. Then I would go to probably either Mark or Luke. You can read Matthew. I think there's a lot of Old Testament reference in Matthew, which might make it more confusing for you. I believe Mark is the shortest gospel. I believe Luke is the longest. So I would read one of those. So where John is more like who Jesus is, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's more of what Jesus, I guess, did in his life. So that's what I would do. Start with John, go to either Mark or Luke. Following that, you can kind of just make your way through the New Testament, if you will. I'll point out other books that I like to spend time in. One being Acts. This is what happened after Jesus, which I think is very beneficial, obviously, for the world that we're living in now. My favorite book of the Bible is Romans. My favorite chapter is Romans 8. Romans is really like the key teachings of Christianity. It's like a bit deeper, but it's very foundational to the principles that, even our nation was founded on. So would recommend spending some time in Romans. Another one that's good bite-sized pieces and definitely has some good verses in there that I think can be applicable to your everyday life is Psalms. Again, this is kind of like heart-level connection with God. These are verses you can kind of sprinkle in your daily life. Lots and lots of chapters in Psalms, but they're short. After you get through those, I would say in the New Testament, that's when I would say that you kind of have the foundation to go back to the beginning, Genesis, and learn about how it all began. I really like Proverbs too, which this is very like wisdom inspired for everyday life. You can read 1 chapter per day. So again, to just kind of outline it, I would start with John, then I would go to either Mark or Luke. I would go to Acts, Romans, go back to Genesis, start there. You can sprinkle in Proverbs and Psalms in your everyday. That's what I would do. It's just my advice. Some more tips here for you all. Again, would not try and read it cover to cover right away. I think that's how most people burn out and find themselves pretty confused. Secondly is to use a reading plan, which again, you can do this through things like the Bible 365 app. Any sort of devotional is a fantastic way to, again, hold you accountable. And having a group too. If you're a part of a Devo group, critical in terms of being able to continue on without feeling bogged down. Journaling is a fantastic way. Writing down questions you have. Some of these Bibles have like questions in there. You'll read a passage. It's kind of like school, but you'll read a passage and it'll give you a question. It's a great way to really help you form independent thoughts and really think about what you're reading. I guess my last helpful tip is to pray before reading. right? Ask God to help you understand, to speak to your heart, to give you the discernment to understand what he wants to reveal through his word to you. Last thing for you is to not let the flame die. I want you to remember how you felt watching that video, if you had to see that video. I believe that video should be, I mean, I hate that I saw that video. Of course, we would never air that on this show. I believe it should be taken off the internet. That's like one of the things you see on like the deep dark web. But I want you to remember how you felt. If you saw it, the close-up clip like I did, remember how you felt in that moment. And I want that to ignite this fire under you. Obviously, we have to move on in our daily lives. We live in this world where there's so much going on, both good and bad. There's always a new, headline in the news, especially with the efficiency and the swiftness that the Trump administration is working with. Like, there's so many newsworthy things that are happening every single day. Of course, we have to move on socially, but I just want to remind you to remember the conviction that you've probably felt, if you're anything like me, over the past week or so, and to not let that flame die. It is, as I've said, a once-in-a-lifetime revival that we are witnessing. Charlie died a martyr with really his only weapon being a microphone. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. We will see you guys again next week.